Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for another session on our NGO's organizational effectiveness workshops. Today, we're starting a new session, starting a non-profit organization. And we believe that all of us who are seated, we are ready for the action. Our resource person is also here, and so we will begin right away. I will be reading her bio, and then after which I will ask her to lead the session. Edem Dorothy Osai is a lawyer with over 15 years working in child rights advocacy and the education sector. She is a founder and current director of Mentoring Assistance for Youths and Entrepreneurs Initiative. This is a non-profit based in Nigeria, working to advance young people's development through equity in education, entrepreneurship programs, and practical civil engagement, ensuring that girls are not left behind. In 2021, the mentoring initiative gained special consultative status with UNESCO, United Nations, UNESCO, and has since participated in meetings and the United Nations General Assembly. In 2018, EDEM initiated Girls Without Borders, a school club-based program that teaches adolescent girls about their rights and how to exercise their agency, and has since published several resources, including a policy brief on gender responsive education in emergencies in Nigeria, presently serving as a country consultant for the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies in Nigeria. EDEM holds a master's degree in international development and policy from the University of Chicago, where she was selected as an inaugural Obama Foundation scholar. She also obtained her first master's degree in cultural and media studies from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, and a certificate in new media and citizens journalism from the Helen Getty School of Citizen Journalism, Israel. In 2016, EDEM was appointed a Mandela Washington Fellow by the US Department of State. She's also a recipient of several awards for her work in education and gender equality, including the African American Institute Peach First Prize at the State of Education in Africa Conference, Lagos, Nigeria in 2015, as well as the Commonwealth Women in Leadership Prize, 10th Women Affairs Ministers Meeting in Bangladesh, 2013. She is a civically active citizen. From 2017 to 2018, EDEM served as the Oyo State Youth Leader for the now defunct Kowa political party in Nigeria. EDEM, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. And good morning once again. I'm excited to be here.
All right, so over to you. Please go ahead. You can share your screen.
All right. Sorry, it's taking a moment.
All right.
Let me restart that shared screen again.
It's coming up.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good morning once again, everyone. And it's an honor to be able to facilitate today's session with you. We have all the way up till 1 p.m. to share some of the insights and principles.
But Adam, we have not seen your slide.
You can't see my slides yet?
It's only your folder that we can see.
Oh, wow. It's showing differently here. Okay, let me stop share and start again. Is it showing now? Is it showing?
Yes, it is.
All right. Okay. I think maybe we lost Mr. Itayo. So once again, I was just setting the tone. Good morning. I wish to thank everyone who has joined today. As it was introduced in my bio, I have been running a nonprofit for the past 10 years. And so I'm excited about this opportunity to be able to share with founders like myself and aspiring founders on some of the principles and the things you should be considering or paying great attention to as you set up your organizations and then begin to develop them. So over the next, well, it's less than 2 hours now because we've spent about 11 minutes on introductions. But all the way up till 1 p.m., I'll be sharing some of these principles with you. Please, at any point in time, I'm going to try to be looking at the chats. So if you have, a question on something I have just talked about, I'm very okay with you, perhaps raising your hand or, even just jump in, because sometimes when I facilitate, I might not be able to really, keep my sights on all the chat sections. So if there's any issue where you require clarity on, please feel free to just, tap your mic and indicate so that we will give you the floor to ask your question. So I think for me, that's the style that we will adopt. I want this to be as engaging as possible because I know I'm dealing with people who are on the field, and it has to be practical and address the questions that are on your mind. So my hope is that through this session, you will gain real practical tools and, better understanding of how to navigate the scene as you go about also setting up your nonprofit. Some of you have already initiated the nonprofit and kickstarted the formal processes. Some of you are registered, you've even flagged off projects already, but certain things may have, been neglected. As a founder myself, I know for many years, I was focused on programs. We're very strong on the programmatic side. And oftentimes we are failing, or our shortcomings have to do with structures and systems. And then the minute we begin to deal with international donors, then all the flaws in our systems become exposed because we're not then eligible for many grants. We're not eligible for many partnerships. So I'm hoping to be able to address some of the questions and some of the general, issues that many founders, tend to overlook in this journey of running their nonprofits. I hope my slides are still clear. So today's purpose is essentially to be able to describe for us what nonprofits are. And I don't want it to be too theoretical, focusing on the differences between nonprofits and for-profits and all of that, but we'll just, touch on those basic, definitional or conceptual things while we really move on to, what steps we need to take. What are the key foundational steps we must take when we set about initiating this nonprofit? There's a hand that is raised. Marvel, please go ahead, Marvel. Marvel, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead with your question or your comments quickly. Marvel, the floor is open for you to ask your question, or I'll have to move on because of time.
I think you should just move on, please. Let's move on.
Good. So our objectives for this session today, when we touch on the conceptual and we deal with some of these definitional, meanings, the difference between our nonprofit and the for-profit businesses we're more familiar with or that are very common in the society. We also want to then really deal with what are the foundational steps? What are the beginning things you must do? The way you read some books, 10 things you need to do before you start that nonprofit. We are not tagging it under that label, but we want to be able to address some of the principal things you have to cover, activities you need to carry out. It is in the best interest and the long-term sustainability of this wonderful initiative you wish to launch for you to carry out these practical steps first and foremost before you launch into programs. Many times, because of the circumstances that lead to us starting, a problem in your community, some lapse that you experienced, something you're passionate about, with that zeal, we often go straight into projects. We often go straight into, an intervention. And in the process, the pillars that must be erected to sustain that intervention, we fail to put them in place. We're hoping that through today's session, we will cover many of those aspects and you will have a rubric in your hand about what things you have to do. And if you're already running programs and you know that you are yet to carry out these activities, it's not too late. You backtrack immediately and begin to cover those things. So these are some of our objectives for today. The basic things you need to do and how to do them. We won't be able to cover how to do all of the basic steps because this training is going to last, I think, 3 sessions. So we'll go deeper in the subsequent sessions in some of the details. But this introductory session will cover some of these fundamental foundational areas that you as the founder need to cover. So I think with that agenda set, let's move right in to this conceptual definition. When we think of nonprofits, what are we basically talking about? In our own environment in Nigeria, we are used to the term non-governmental organization. We hear things like NGO. Nonprofits are a terminology that in recent times we're becoming more and more familiar with. We're using it more, it's becoming more prevalent. But when we were younger and the landscape was opening up, and in fact till today, it's more common to go into certain settings and hear the term used NGO. Don't be confused. We're describing the same kind of entity. We're describing the same type of organization. The non-governmental organization, what it signals is that it is in pursuit of those fundamental derivatives of government. If you look at the Constitution, my legal background will show. The Constitution tells us what governments need to do for people. The whole expectations of the social contract. What is the government expected to deliver for people? Now, when you have an organization that is not government, that is not the public sector, that is not, an agency appointed or set up by the government, pursuing those same objectives that government is supposed to carry out. That is the umbrella term for NGOs. It becomes known as a non-governmental organization. It is pursuing developmental objectives, which ordinarily would fall within the purview of government. Similarly, that's what a nonprofit is about. A nonprofit just indicates that whatever objectives we are pursuing, whatever activities this organization is devoted to carrying out, it is done without the focus on making profit, which demarcates it or distinguishes it immediately from your typical commercial entity, from your typical business. In fact, we're now having, the space has evolved and we're having the term social enterprise. You have to also recognize, when we talk about social enterprises, what we're just, and we put nonprofits within that spectrum as well. What we are signaling is that nonprofits have learned over the years, or NGOs have learned over the years, that it is critical for them to be sustainable. It is critical for them to, think about what will they do to ensure that funding remains constant, that they continue to generate revenue. So an organization can still be in pursuit of developmental objectives, not for profit objectives, and is still making money to sustain its running. That money that it is making goes back into the objectives of the organization. It is not going towards paying the board members, paying the directors, giving them, dividends at the end of the year. So don't get confused when you hear these terms popping up. Oh, social enterprise. Some businesses that are described as social enterprises may be for profit. That is, the goal at the end of the day is for them to record a profit, which is shared with their investors and their shareholders. It is also possible for a non-profit to be described as a social enterprise, in the sense that it is pursuing developmental objectives without intending to make profit, which will be distributed to its members at the end of the day. Whatever money it makes or revenues it records goes back into carrying out the objectives of the organization. But let's stick to the term non-profit. I just wanted to clarify that issue that I know a lot of people ask me questions around. Can my NGO be described as a social enterprise? And this is why when we are registering with CAC, or you're submitting your annual returns, and CAC or your auditors ask you, but you are an NGO, sometimes your auditors will ask you, you are an NGO, how come you are charging for the sale of black soap? How come you are charging for the sale of, some things that your NGO makes? You say, oh yes, we charge for those things, but we don't, it's not profit for the organization. It goes right back into the operations of the organization. So those are the answers you can give that make it clear that even though you may be making money from some products or services that your organization runs, it is not considered profit. it is under the toga sustainability. So having said that, I want it to be clear in your mind. The minute you are running an intervention, whether it is in your community, in your state, and your goal is not for profit, you're not trying to become a rich businessman, you're not trying to become, the next Dangote, the next Otedola, the next Razak Okoya. For you, you're doing that business. Maybe even if you're charging people for trainings, building their capacity, teaching people how to establish solar, installation of solar panels, and maybe your NGO is focused on renewable energy, and you charge young people to come and learn how they do the installation procedures. If your goal by charging them is to be able to expand the program, to scale it, to go into more communities, to be able to reach more people, your target maybe at the end of the year is that in January, I trained 50. By the end of the year, I want to be able to train 300. You are under what we call a non-profit. Your pursuit, your objectives are not for financial benefits to either you, the founder, or your directors. Instead, every money you are making is to go back into serving the organization's objectives. And automatically what that means is the public interest. You are considered a non-profit. So sometimes you read forms, they will say, are you a CBO? That is, are you a community-based organization? This is just describing, the context or how wide your work or the influence of your work reaches. Sometimes they will say, are you a national organization? Sometimes they say, are you an international NGO? We call them INGOs. You are all non-profits, to the extent that the pursuit of your objectives are in the public interest rather than for financial benefit. So I hope that is clear. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Why do we start non-profits? And as I ask these questions, please, I'm looking at the chats. So feel free to write your own motives. What led you to start your own non-profit? When you started it, what was your motivation? But why do we start non-profits? What is typically the reason, the compelling reason that an individual or a group of individuals get together to come and, initiate something they call an NGO? What leads them to do this? And if you look at your own experiences, you will find that Maybe it was a problem that afflicted your community. And so you were tired of it and decided, I can't take this anymore. This has to stop. Sometimes a group of people see a condition of, underdevelopment in their community, and they want to do something about it, or it's an individual. We have terms we are used to. We hear passion project. Passion project. Usually it's something that, it invokes your passion. You've seen so many challenges as a result of this problem. You've seen so many, complications arise in your community, and you're like, let's put our resources together. Let's do something about it. So basically, if you look at any example of a nonprofit and you ask questions, most of your examinations will reveal a common thread across the individuals who are behind such an initiative. They were tired and, dissatisfied with a condition of underdevelopment, a challenge of development, and it was always in the interest of the collective, something that affected, the environment or the people, the group of people surrounding them, the environment they live in that we call our habitat. Usually it is not just something affecting them. It's something that affects us as a collective. And so they decide in their minds, they get together, they say, okay, let's put resources together to tackle this problem. That is usually the common thread that cuts across many organizations that we call NGOs and nonprofits. A discontent with a condition of development in society that provokes or inspires or motivates, whatever language you want to use, the individual behind it or the group of individuals behind it to say, no more, I can do something about it. I can stem the tide of this problem. I can shift, I can transform the situation. And so they embark on this common goal or common purpose, which we then see evolve into a nonprofit. So for you listening, I suspect that was your own inspiration or motivation as well. Maybe it was a condition of unemployment affecting young people. And you said, what is this issue, this problem that graduates will emerge? And then the workplace, even though, yes, the sectors are not wide enough and there's not enough jobs, but there's still some jobs that some employers are saying there's lack of employability skills. They don't have enough soft skills. So you then decide, okay, my focus will be to help Nigerian undergraduates increase their chances of, gaining quick employment upon graduation from tertiary institutions by equipping and empowering them with relevant soft skills that the workplace needs, or that the workforce of today requires, or that the labor market of today demands. That may be your own objective. The research is telling us that tertiary institutions are not providing these relevant soft skills in the curriculum that students are exposed to. So there must be an intervention put in place. Or maybe for you, it's the environment that is of concern to you. And you say, the situation of flooding is, continuing to grow and threaten lives and livelihoods and property. And climate change and the effects of climate change continue to exacerbate this problem. But human activities are also contributing. And the reason why human activities are contributing is because people are not informed about maybe proper waste disposal methods, or people are not informed about, how to recycle waste rather than dump, that not everything we think is waste is actually waste. If people were trained in recycling methods, then household waste would reduce significantly by so rate to so rate. So you've decided to take it upon yourself to begin to train households, train institutions, train, organizations on how to recycle waste products so that we reduce significantly the ton of waste that our communities are producing. That may be your own compelling, intervention that you've said, in the interest of the public, I will do this, or this group of people will do this so as to, attack this problem. So these are some of the reasons why we do indeed embark on nonprofits. Now, having said, as someone who is a founder, and who was once at that phase of, seeing a problem and saying, I'm dissatisfied with it, I can totally relate to many founders who immediately, your first objective is to sit down and design a project or an intervention, and then to think of how am I going to implement it? Okay, what amount of funds will I raise? And then you just build your focus around that intervention. But running a nonprofit is far more complex than that. And I had to learn the hard way. A lot of the steps that we must carry out, we omit to. A lot of the foundational activities that we should embark upon or engage, spend rigor, paying attention to, we omit to, because we launch straight into that passion project. We are so zealous about that problem and we just go straight into it. But one foundational key step, any person who is about to launch a nonprofit, who is thinking about it, you're still thinking about it, you know, maybe you've not yet decided what vehicle you will adopt, whether it will be a business model or a nonprofit model, and you're still thinking about it. Or you have even already launched your nonprofit. Like I said, a lot of steps that you omitted to, you can still go back and, you know, backtrack. The first and very important one is what we call research and planning. Research and planning. Starting your NGO doesn't just involve you, you know, relying on one example. Sometimes I'll ask many founders, what led you to do this? They say, okay, one time I went to this place and this is what I observed. And next thing I saw that there was a problem. And I find that too many people, you know, launch a whole entity on the premise of a narrow personal experience. Your personal experiences are very valid, make no mistake, but they are supposed to serve as indicators of a problem that should lead you to delve into even more deeper research. Or maybe an example, maybe an experience somebody shared with you. Or maybe you observed it consistently as a pattern amongst a group of people for a period of time. That is still not sufficient. Whatever observations you make about problems around you should fuel your curiosity to go and do deeper research. I have a young mentee with me currently whose passion is for athletics. She herself is a young, promising, very talented female athlete who after secondary school never got any opportunity to continue her sporting career. She was a wonderful track and field athlete. She was also fantastic in volleyball in secondary school, took part in numerous state-based and statewide competitions. But the minute she finished secondary school, that was the end. She entered university. In the university, she gained admission to. There is no volleyball team. There are no volleyball activities. Track and field. Yes, the university, I think, has a sports center, but there is no director of the sports center. There are no coaches, there are no programs. So long and short, her sporting career or dreams, she had dreams of going pro, but they died a natural death because the environment she found herself in did not provide her with opportunities to access, you know, further training opportunities, to access competitions, formal competitions, or even resources, financial, you know, support that could lead her to a professional career. And so she said that from her experience, she has learned that many young, talented female athletes are unable, basically they're unable to continue athletic or sporting careers in Nigeria because of these three fundamental problems: lack of sport training opportunities, lack of formal competition opportunities, and lack of financial support. And so she wants to do something about it. So her personal experience is her first encounter with a problem. I told her, I said, good, that experience is valid, but that experience should then lead you to embark on rigorous research. How wide is this problem? How prevalent is this problem? You're basically making a claim that there is a trend of, you know, dropout or disruption of sporting careers for young, talented female athletes at secondary school level because of certain factors. I mean, it's a claim. it has to go beyond your personal experience. You have to be able to say, evidence shows that in Oyo State, for instance, or in my community, between the period of so and so, over 70% of the secondary school female athletes who gained admission into tertiary institutions were unable to access continuing sporting programs to progress into professional careers. You must make that, personal, you must broaden it to see how wide is this problem? Because if you build a whole organization around solving a problem or tackling an issue and intervention, you have to be able to justify that it is a wide problem. It affects numerous people. Indeed, it is a challenge that are of developmental proportions in your community. You must support it with evidence. The only way to be able to support it with evidence is to embark on the research. So the research helps you to even define the problem. Because when I'm using this case study now as to illustrate, so think of your own scenario, whether it is a youth unemployment issue your organization is built to deal with, whether it is a women economic empowerment challenge you are focused on, whether it is climate change and its impact, maybe lack of adaptation and mitigation strategies in your community, whether it is lack of youth participation in political activities or democratic processes in your community. Whatever it is you're working on, you must be able to define that specific problem and its target population, or define its affected population with evidence. Please, founders. Usually, anybody who encounters you for the first time when you're describing, oh, I run an organization, will ask you, can I see your strategic document, your working documents? In that strategic plan or your working documents, we expect to see the statement of the problem. Any person who wants to understand what you're doing will expect to see a component in your documentation that tells us, or tells the world the statement of the problem you are tackling. That statement of the problem has to have evidential basis. It can't be, you can't just be making claims. Many people will say, Nigeria has a youth unemployment crisis. Many youths don't make it after graduating from tertiary institutions to formal employed positions. What's the evidence? So these are critical. So your research has to embark on finding out what is the problem. When you define the problem, automatically defining the problem leads you to mention certain factors that are drivers of this problem. So, okay, key factors affecting youth unemployment are lack of, employability skills, because tertiary institutions, the curriculums, they blah, 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 do not, equip, the classroom does not equip young tertiary students with these skill sets. Oh, lack of employers, lack of, job sectors, or lack of enterprises in the communities that are able to absorb the number of graduates coming out of our institutions. So you've identified certain factors that are contributing to this. Oh, the problem is that those who come out of these institutions, they don't even have the skills. Another major factor behind this is that there are not enough businesses that are able to employ and absorb the talent. Another problem is that, oh, there's not enough funding to support the ecosystem of enterprise development so that, entrepreneurship can become a culture, and leading to young people not only seeking jobs, but also seeking to create jobs. You're able to identify factors. Then you begin to mention how particularly it relates to your community. I hope we're still together. Please, like I said, feel free to indicate if you have any question. My screen is on full screen. I'm trying to get out of full screen so I can see if there are any issues. But if you have raised your hand and I'm not seeing you, feel free to, again, tap your mic. So in the process of your research, you will naturally do what we call community, you will scan your community. Some people, you might call it feasibility studies, you might call it, needs assessment. You're basically looking at how this defined problem this problem you've defined specifically relates to your community. What are the numbers of the affected population? How is it hindering progress in your community? Who needs it specifically? Sometimes when we are in the NGO sector, I always ask the question, sometimes your beneficiary is different from your, especially when we're designing our sustainability plan. The person who is the beneficiary of your program may not be the person who is going to fund it. So you have to be able to identify your stakeholders. Who are the people who are affected? Sometimes the student who needs the soft skills or employability skills may not be able to afford the training, even though they are the direct beneficiary. But it's the company that is needing in search of talent, that they've been sourcing for talent. Maybe there's a new energy company that's been looking for young people in that community who are able to do solar panel installations and they can't find. And so they have to now be bringing people from external communities, and it is increasing their cost of operations. That becomes a key stakeholder or target in your whole sustainability plan. That company becomes your target for funding because that company is faced with a problem. They are directly affected by this condition of underdevelopment in the area of soft skills in your community. So they will partner with you to give you the money to train these people because it increases their talent pipeline. It increases the pool of young people that they have, to employ from within that community. So all of these things, you do them, you identify this in your social marketing. When you do this expansive research, it helps you to frame the mission statement of your organization. Who are you as an organization? I ask people, what's your mission? And I hear so many vague things. And I just know that they've not done the deep homework. Because automatically, when you carry out these basic steps of researching the problem, identifying the factors, it's helping you to narrow to your mission statement. Again, going back to the example of my young friend who wants to tackle this issue of a high trend of, dropout rate of young, talented female athletes at secondary school level from the continuation of sporting careers. Of course, yes, there's a problem, but as we continue to dig deeper into the factors driving the problem, she was able to then frame her mission. She can't solve all the problems. In that specific, that definition, that problem she has defined, it's so broad. You look at the fact that there's no collegiate issues of even collegiate sporting opportunities. Most colleges, like I said, many universities, many private schools, institutions don't have collegiate sporting opportunities. There's no volleyball, there's no cricket, there's no hockey, there's no basketball, there's no swimming team, there's no, at collegiate level, sporting opportunities are limited. Is she going to start building or going to all the universities to start, establishing sporting programs? She doesn't have the resources, right? But she's able to then narrow to say, which of these factors driving this major problem am I passionate about addressing? Am I reasonably able to address, bearing in mind the resources at my disposal or the resources I can tap into within my context? So then it helps you frame your mission. So for her, after identifying the problem, she says, I am going to design a sports mentoring and coaching program for young female athletes at secondary school level that supports them with training opportunity. Remember, she mentioned there were 3 key drivers. So for her then, she's going to support young, talented female athletes at secondary school level with sports training opportunities, access to sports training opportunities. 2, leadership mentoring that helps them address many of the psychosocial challenges they face, body shaming, nutritional challenges, mental health, pressure from trying to do academic performance, keep up with academic performance while also maintaining their sports careers. Some of these things are a lot of psychological pressure on athletes. And finally, she says resource advisory. So one of the things she has identified is if a young female athlete who is talented cannot find opportunities in her local environment, if she has good guidance and advice, she will be able to go on the internet to come into information awareness, to access information about other sports opportunities that maybe schools abroad are providing. through resource advisory services, she can teach young female athletes at secondary school level how to write essays seeking sports scholarships. So these 3 areas of support, she says she will build an initiative to provide this. And if she does these 3 things, if her mission statement is to support young people, young female athletes, to be able to access these 3 programs so that they can progress into professional sports careers rather than drop out. That's a mission statement. Immediately I hear it, and I hear what she is. She's a sports mentoring and coaching program that supports who? She says it in her, I know who she supports in her mission statement. And she hints at why, or at what she offers them. So she offers them mentoring, she offers them resource advisory and services, and she offers them access to training opportunities. So your mission statement should be able to address these questions. Immediately I hear, who are you? That is, oh, I am an energy saving company. I'm a renewable energy saving organization. I'm an organization focused on adaptation, climate adaptation and mitigation strategies in the community by or helping youth to adopt climate mitigation and adaptation strategies so as to reduce global temperature by so percentage. These are 7 key things that your mission statement, very simple statements, will tell us because you've done the research to identify the problem. Key things you are also focused on, which many people omit: how to recruit and form your board of directors. I meet many people, and I know, and I suspect that many of us on the group are affected. You just went to your friends. You went to your friends or people, your relatives. See, when you wanted to do your initiative and you needed to raise money, because you can't keep telling people to send money to your personal account. Okay, naturally, they say, oh, go and register NGO. You went to, or you wanted to open an account with the bank. The bank said it has to be an organization incorporated. So you went to CAC. CAC says you must give us a minimum of 2 trustees, 2 to so trustees. You looked around you. Okay, your friend from university or your colleague in church or so it's your pool of friends you just picked, and they formed your first board of directors. You will run into problems. Many times ahead of you lies challenges because you did not pay attention to the principles you needed to pay attention to when dealing with recruitment of board of directors. A board is a critical organ of your organization. Please don't joke with it. I have many people who come for my nonprofit clinics, and the major headache is their board. Oh, I have a non-responsive board. I have a board that won't attend meetings. I have a board that micromanages me. Oh, I have a board that we just got a grant, and the member of the board is saying that this percentage of the grant money, since he was the one that gave us the connection, he must earn a portion of the grant. They must pay him. You will hear all sorts of challenges. The stories are numerous because fundamentally we failed to do the needful when it came to recruiting our board. Also, you have to pay attention because there's what we call the legal compliance aspect. So a lot of us, when it's time to incorporate our NGO, we just call our friend who is a lawyer, or we just run to that lawyer in our church. Hey, sir, hey, ma, please, sir, please, ma, help me. I want to incorporate. And they say you are a lawyer. Please, can you help me do the registration or refer me? So they'll just tell you, okay, bring this amount of money, we'll do everything for you. You don't know your constitution. You've not read it. You don't even know that that lawyer drafted a constitution for you. Too many people are affected by these things, these scenarios I'm describing. They don't even know that the lawyer drafted a constitution and CAC has a copy of that constitution. They don't know that in the constitution, they're expected to have board meetings 3 times a year. 3 times a year. And yes, they've only had a board meeting once since the existence of that NGO. That first board meeting that they just needed so that they could have minutes of meetings so they could file with the signatures. So a lot of errors because you yourself, you didn't take the pains. You cannot outsource the recruitment, the registration process of your NGO to an external party and just not pay attention. You have to be, following up, monitoring the steps, reading the documents that have been drafted on your behalf, the guiding documents that will frame the whole life of your organization. That lawyer is going to create for you what we call, the constitution, that is the articles of incorporation, your bylaws. You will submit, trustees. They will ask you for your trustees. Who are your trustees? You will provide the names of these trustees. These trustees, some people call them board of directors. CAC recognizes them as board of trustees. Sometimes your organization may have more than one organ. It may have a board of trustees and a board of directors. So you must read that constitution to understand what the lawyer involved or whoever you called in and engaged, the professional you engaged, has drafted for you. You should be able to sit with your lawyer and say, this is what I want. From my understanding of many organizations, the experience shared with me is that it is best to have two organs. The trustees maybe can be, more elderly people, more accomplished people whose name recognition will speak volumes for the organization, but we need a board of directors who are more involved. They can attend quarterly meetings. The trustees are maybe they're retired. We don't want to be disturbing them. You will be the one to say, this is the approach I want. So don't just leave it and close your hands and fold your hands and go to sleep and let somebody describe for you how the organization will run. Pay attention. Another key thing you must do is develop your strategic plan. I hope I'm not rushing too fast. We will still go into detail, please, on all these steps, but I'm just trying to point out, if you look at it on the screen, you can see there are 9. There are about 9 basic foundational key steps that are recommended for you as a founder. So this is what I'm just trying to, basically touch on before we then go delve into deep detail into each one of them. We've talked about paying attention to your articles of incorporation, your constitution, your board charter. Sometimes many organizations, I will ask them, what are the terms that you've of reference for your board members? They say terms of reference. I said, did you give your board, when you engage your board, did you give each member a letter? Do they have a letter engaging them? And in that letter, does it describe their responsibilities or the expectations that the NGO has of them? And similarly, the obligations that the NGO, offers them. Do you have any charter, any document that defines a sort of, some MOU? It's not an MOU, or you can call it an MOU for your board if you want, whatever language you want to use, but it frames the relationship. It tells the board, oh, we'll expect you to attend meetings of the organization for which you will receive notices. It tells them that you will serve for a tenure. You are not a permanent, you're not in perpetuity, you're not a life member of the board. Our own system is tenure based. However, at the end of your first tenure, it is subject to renewal for a second tenure upon your consent or upon, nomination by other board members. You will frame, you will tell, there must be a document shared with your board that frames the relationship they have with the organization. Many times I've said, do you have these things? Most people don't have them. And interestingly, the world is so global now, and we are all relying on, partnerships and grants. Whatever you fail to do at local level, when you are dealing with global partners who are enforcing best practices, then exposure comes in. Because they will ask you, can I see your file for your board members, the file with your board? I would like to see your board members, your board file. They basically want to see these terms of reference. They want to see engagement letters with your board members. They want to see minutes of meetings, the number of meetings you've had, resolutions passed by your board. They would like to see these things for them, because they are checking the credibility of your organization. After all, you're asking them to invest millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, thousands of pounds, thousands of foreign currency to your objectives. They want to be sure that the group of individuals guiding the life and decision-making of this organization are credible, are committed, are involved, are engaged. You don't have these documents. So these things are important. Also, you have to develop a strategic plan. And this is where, let me use the language on the streets, casala bursts. Because I will ask many founders, can I see your strategic plan? Either your 1-year strategic plan or your 2-year strategic plan. Your strategic plan for me is your introductory document. Oh, I'm an organization, I'm an NGO, I'm passionate about access to healthcare. Lack of, excuse me, please reduce that TV. Lack of access to healthcare services affects maternal and child mortality in my community. And so I am creating a telemedicine initiative that allows people in rural and marginalized communities to access maybe primary healthcare or the first level healthcare through phone calls or WhatsApp. And we say, okay, what a lofty organization. That mission statement sounds very lovely. Can I see your strategic plan? It is missing. Ask yourself as you're on this program, on this session, do you have a strategic plan representing your organization's goals for the next 1 or 2 years from initiation? So at every point in time in the life of your organization, there must be a strategic plan document governing its activities. For you who are just starting out, yours is a foundational strategic plan. Oh, in the first 2 years of the life of my organization, this and this and this are the 3 key goals this organization is going to pursue. The first goal is going to be partnership drives. Goal 2, systems and organizational development. Goal 3, fundraising. So anybody that picks up your document understands that this mission statement, this organization is focused on health. Its vision is for a community where people have access to primary health care. And in the first 2 or 3 years, here are things it's going to be doing. Here is its SWOT, and we'll go into the components that you must cover in your strategic plan. But if I just look at that, I will immediately have a wonderful understanding of this brilliant organization. I will see the statement of the problem that this organization was created, came into the world to solve. All of these things. But many founders don't have it because, like I said, it is that project. We often come into this space with a project mindset or a program lens. I want to do this program. In my case, and I'm guilty too, so I will admit, in my case, I was addressing, gaps in public sector education in my state. Primarily, the extinction of library services. So I decided that I wanted to launch mobile libraries. So rather than sit down to build a strategic plan document that will frame the life of a broad organization, I just sat down and designed a concept for launching mobile libraries in a community, a project. So I created an organization based on a concept for a project. And you will run into problems because when you approach, passion project is different from organizational management. Now, many times you wanted to solve a problem, you intuitively wanted to do good. Wanting to do good is not sufficient to run an organization. In the process of wanting to solve a problem and launch a project, like I said, the bank will tell you, you have to have a corporate registration. Next thing you are dealing with CAC. Next thing you have in your hand a whole organization. But you don't have a blueprint. Your strategic plan is basically your blueprint. You don't build a house without having a blueprint, do you? So you don't have a blueprint for running an organization. What inspired you was one small project, yet the system led you naturally through natural progression into going to establish an NGO. So you find yourself having a vehicle, a formal vehicle called an NGO, but your mind is only able to envision a small project. You are not yet ready. So you find yourself, you must evolve from that passion project person to that organizational manager. And these are all the things you must carry out. You have to have your strategic plan. When you have a strategic plan, it is inevitable that you will also have a budget. And if you are holding an NGO registration document in your hand, I assure you, CAC is expecting annual returns from you. Every year, you are supposed to be submitting a set of documents to CAC, telling them what you did in the year just ended. Those documents involve your audited financial statements. Those documents involve minutes of meetings held with your board where resolutions were passed. All of those things are telling CAC that yes, you are still a going concern. That is, you are still an entity. They registered you to go and solve a public challenge, a public service, challenge, that you are still in the business of solving that problem. And you are still following the guidelines that are set for nonprofits towards addressing such problems. So all of these things are, like I said, they're important for you to pay attention to. So we have been able to summarize the 9 key steps that you should carry out. I want to pause now to see questions on the chat box so that I'm not just talking. We're exactly at, it's 12. So let's see. Let me leave.
Emmanuel is on, so I'll ask Emmanuel to unmute.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Ma, for the smart and clear lecture so far. Please, I want to make a request, like the letter we are to give to our board member, either an MOU or a letter, if we can help us with the samples and then samples of how our strategic plan should look like. If you can help us with the samples so we can go through it after the class, then try to put in our organization. Thank you very much, Ma.
Okay, so we're still going to go into strategic planning. And at the phase, when we're discussing strategic planning, I will cover all those components. So in covering it, you're going to have like a framework, a guide, all the headings, all the headlines, all the captions that you must, that should be reflected in your strategic document. Also, I will share with the organizers of the American Spaces some resources that I have. I know that the American Spaces also curates a number of amazing resources to support nonprofits. And so I'm sure they'll be able to guide us towards the links where founders like yourself can access these templates. There are many templates. So I suspect that the American Spaces have a set of templates that operate as a guide. I will share mine, but more importantly, it's not just sharing templates. I will walk you through the components, the elements, especially in strategic planning, that should be covered when you're going about it. Who you should even call to the table, the stakeholders that you should be in a room with. Don't just sit down with you and your 3 friends, What stakeholders should be in a room when you're even embarking on strategic planning? So some of these things I will cover. Similarly, board charters and terms of reference. Again, I suspect that these things are curated, templates like this are curated within certain archives and portals that the American Spaces hold. I will also share with the organization templates that I have, and I know they will be distributed around to all of you. And if there are links, I know Mr. Itayo and the Hasty team will also point us to links that you can visit. So we'll address that. So
Let me just quickly make it very clear. We don't have any curated list. What we have is the internet access. But we do have some publications that we can share the links. So we do that was at when due. So we have the second person, Titi Lope, to please go ahead. Titi Lope.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Titi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Ma, for these wonderful teachings. I just have a question. On this board of directors and board of trustees, is it, or let me just put it as, is it necessary to have both of them, or you can just have one? Especially when you're just starting out, so you're not having so many people to be responsible for. That's the first question. Then number 2 is, please, what's the difference between the sustainability plan and the strategic plan? can just quickly give some insights on it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Titi. Brilliant questions. So regarding your corporate governance structure, what the question you're asking has to do with corporate governance. Oh, should I have double organ? That is board of trustees, board of directors. Should I have single organ, just board of directors or board of trustees? Again, it all connects to your strategic plan. Now, if I have a group of maybe let me put it this way. I'll illustrate with there's a jazz community, a group of elderly professionals, retirees in a state who are worried that classical music is becoming extinct, and that they believe that classical music has health benefits, so and so benefits, and they want to ensure that the younger generation embrace classical music, especially jazz and all whatnot. Now, these are retirees who have all succeeded in corporate sector, this, that sector, and there are many. And they decide that they don't want to be based only in maybe one state. They want to have operations across the whole nation. The corporate governance structure they design will be very different from a young organization that says, I want to solve waste management challenges in Idishin community, in Oyo, in Alaki local government of Oyo state. Your mission statement and the scale of your intervention begins to define the structure you will put in place for governance. Because governance is simply looking at, if this amount of resources are allocated to this project or to this initiative, what is the level of skilled professionals that we need to be governing the decision-making processes of this organization? I don't just want to tell, there's no formula. It's not yes and no. If I set out with an organization with $50 million, I will put in powerful corporate governance structures. I will put in governance structures that can checkmate at every level. Because at the end of the day, you must understand what's the rationale of corporate governance. It's for checks and balances in the organization. You want to make sure that even the board of directors is reporting to a higher organ, the board of trustees. But if in your case, you're starting with very minimal resources, you know that just a group of 5 experienced individuals, one with administrative background, one with legal background, one with environmental scientific background, that is fine. You don't need plenty drama. Then it's up to you. So it all depends on the scale of your mission statement and the amount of resources that are being deployed towards implementing that mission statement. Not just the amount of resources, the level of complexity of your organization should guide you in framing your corporate governance structure. If your NGO has branches across the 36 states of Nigeria, you're a complex organization that your corporate governance structure should reflect the complexity, should be able to check activities of this very wide and complex system. But if you're a very simple NGO, you don't need anything too complex. So these are the principles you should be guided by. These are the factors that should guide you. How complex is your organization? How wide is its distribution? Am I an NGO that has branches in all 33 local governments of Oyo State? Then it is likely that my board, maybe I'm going to be attracting so much resources that it is important that the board has another higher organ that can act as an oversight, because your corporate governance is everybody's acting as oversight to ensure that the objectives are met. So that takes care of that question. So the simplicity or complexity of your organization is what should guide you, please, when you're designing your corporate governance structure. Sometimes you start out small or simple, your corporate governance structure is simple. And then 10 years later, you then decide you want to. When I started, we had one organ and it was fine. By the 10th year, we needed a separate organ to then act as oversight, because the nature of our initial board members, they had retired, they were tired, they weren't as active and responsive. So I couldn't call on them as frequently. And yet I needed people who would act as oversight over the day-to-day management. So I then needed to go back to CAC to amend my constitution to say we want to have 2 organs, one board of directors that has meetings 3 times a year, and then the board of trustees that we report to once yearly, who are more nominal, they are nominal members. So again, how you start is not frozen. You can always evolve into a more complex corporate governance system, depending on how your growth has been over the years. To your second question about the difference between sustainability plans and strategic plans. In your strategic plan, I would likely see your sustainability plan. If you've done your homework well, I expect to see your sustainability plan. Now, your strategic plan is going to tell me things like, oh, this organization is named this. This is its mission. This is its vision. These are its objectives. In the next 2 years, these are the goals that this organization has set for itself, and they must be SMART goals. We'll go into all that. It has done a SWOT analysis, and currently these are its strengths. Its greatest strength is that it is relying on an existing government policy. Maybe we'll talk about the policy context. There is a government policy that recently set a target for all states in Nigeria to reduce carbon emissions from so percentage to so percentage. And so all state governments have been allocated resources from the federal government to embark upon adaptation and mitigation strategies to achieve this objective. This is a great strength for this organization because we are operating within a policy climate that is friendly towards our objectives. Another thing is that technology-wise, we are able to use, access a lot of capacity building opportunities through the internet and so. So you do your SWOT analysis. I will see all those things. I will also see your programs. Having done your homework and done your statement of the problem and all those things, I will see our 3 programs or our 3 key interventions. Basically, I don't want to go into too complex, but when you've identified the statement of problem, I will see your theory of change. I'll be able to see that this organization believes, remember again, using the illustration of that young mentee of mine, she believes that one of the 3 key factors resulting in the dropout of young female athletes from professional careers or from continuity of sporting careers is lack of this, lack of that, lack of resource advisory services, lack of training opportunities, and lack of formal competition, access to formal competitions. So she then designs her programs. If I look at it, I will see her programs. Go and use that TV. I'll see her programs, and her programs will tell me we have 3 flagship programs. Every year, we organize summer camp for female athletes at secondary school level. We also convene community, maybe we'll call it, we also hold community town hall meetings for parents and stakeholders in sporting profession to be able to destroy a lot of myths and misconceptions around female athletes or female sports. Because we find that one of the key challenges that issues why girls don't get resources or financial support from families is because parents don't believe that their careers are available in this. So she will be in your strategic plan. I will see the interventions that you have framed as your flagship programs, which you believe if these things are carried out, it will solve the problems you described in your statement of the problem. That's your theory of change. It tells me that you are saying that if the condition on the ground is 1, if I add 2, 1 + 2 is going to equal to 3. So all of these things I will see in your strategic document. I will also see your sustainability plan, which is telling me, how am I going to sustain this brilliant vision of this or these brilliant objectives? My sustainability plan is to rely, how are you going to make money to pursue your objectives? That's sustainability. How am I going to stay alive? How am I going to survive? How am I going to sustain this brilliant work I want to do? That's sustainability planning. Sustainability planning is not going to tell me the programs you are doing. I'm not looking, when I see your sustainability plan, I'm not trying to see your theory of change. I'm not interested in it. I'm not going to be looking to, I'm not expecting to see that you are doing coaching because you believe that 70% of the girls who drop out is as a result of the fact that they did not get coaching and guidance. That's not the business of sustainability planning. Sustainability planning is telling me that if I'm going to use a school-based approach, school, public school, how am I going to derive revenues that will guarantee that over the next 2 to 5 years, this program continues and does not have a failure, that is, it does not end. So these are the distinctions. Your sustainability plan is telling me how you're going to make sure revenue comes in to keep running your objectives. So in it, I will expect to see your stakeholder mapping. I will expect to see things like, your strategies to derive collaboration, especially funding collaboration from these stakeholders. So that's the distinction, and I trust that it answers your question. I've gone in deeper than I even want, because we'll still dig deeper when we go into strategic planning, but that's it.
Kayode, over to you. Unmute yourself quickly. Oshogbo, let's go to Oshogbo right away.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for this section. So my question, though, you said that we'll still talk more about it, is how to identify stakeholders. I mean, how to select board of trustees and board of trustees or board of directors. So I think you said you will still come back to it to address it. For instance, an organization that want to venture into ecosystem, probably the dump of waste. Okay, you just more or less like a campaign. You want to wage campaign on it to sensitize people on, okay, why do you need to put your debt in a waste bin instead of just dropping it on the floor, thereby causing flood and all. So how can we strategically select board of trustees? Apart from that, another fear I begin to nurse hearing from this is now, okay, if we write to a particular set of people, I write to this person, okay, can we be the board of trustees for this NGO? These are our terms of preference. This is what we are expected to do. So, what if they decline? Probably they feel that, okay, I won't have time for this. I don't have time. Okay, some will even say that, okay, if it's just money, come for me for money. But to plan for you, or to even to even deal with you might be difficult. So how do we analyze that? Okay, is there any other strategy means to identify those boards?
Thank you, Kayode. We're going into that in the next aspect of the session. So I will keep your question for that, next exploratory aspect. I will cover some of these guidelines you need to focus on when recruiting your board members. So just hold tightly to your seat, and I will respond to your question when we end this Q&A.
Chidubem.
Yeah, good day, sir. Thank you, ma. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. My first question is, are there issues? Is there anything wrong, or is there anything to look at in husband and wife establishing an NGO? That is, they registered it as husband and wife. So it's only their two names is in the CAC certificate. Are there things to look at? The second question is, in the issue of submitting report to CAC, are there consequences? Are there things that can come back to the organization for not sending your reports financially and all that? Then what are the factors? You've just made mention of it, but let me still ask it. Considerable factors you look at, like the other person asked. Some of the people we are considering bringing in as board members seems to be very busy, and you want to bring them in, but so we want to know the possible factors. Then the last question is, Okay, let me be personal now. In the organization we have, we are looking at having a subset in the organization. It's called Future Host True Value Impact Foundation. Is registered. Is there anything wrong in having a subset like Future Host Academy that has to run trainings that brings some level of funds and money to the organization, or do we just run it as Future Host True Value Impact for every of our programs? Thank you, ma.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'll try to address. So the third question, again, I'll leave it to the continuing section where I will address some of the fundamental guidelines you should consider when recruiting your board. To your first question, is there anything wrong in a husband and wife, being the registered directors or trustees of an organization? Now, because Nigeria is what it is, all of us, we have different, so even strangers can have the same surname. CAC has no way of, might not be able to verify. Yes, might not be able to verify, how closely related trustees are. And so you find these things occurring. But sir, let me just state it frankly, it is not a best practice. Somebody's mic is on. Can you please mute it? It is not a best practice because, again, it all boils down to the rationale for corporate governance. The reason behind, your board is to be able to act as an oversight. Many organizations, if they ask you for references, if you wanted to submit an application for a fellowship, a graduate program, a postdoctoral program, anything that requires a reference, will tell you, don't give me your relative. I don't want your relative, because it's conflict of interest. The minute you have such a relational tie, it's very difficult, even in a professional setting, for the wife to checkmate the husband and the husband to checkmate the wife. The relationship you have introduces conflict when you are now operating as a corporate governance system. Because if the woman begins to take the money of the NGO, to use for other purposes besides the objective, or vice versa, if it's the man doing that, how effective will the other unit be as a check? How effective? So these are the questions. I know that I don't believe, it's not a best practice. And I strongly believe that a funder who recognizes that that is the relationship, between the members will be worried, it's not a healthy situation for corporate governance. So it's important there's nothing stopping you from being co-founders. I'm drawing a distinction now between co-founders and you acting as board members, So if you are co-founders, that is fine. The two of you are passionate about it. The two of you decided you wanted to go in as a single unit, acting together, that is fine. But you have to have separate individuals serving as the board who provide advisory, who act as oversight, who support in fundraising, and all the other responsibilities that a board serves. So please look into that when you are considering a board, because if you want to be eligible for global grants, either partnerships, you have to present a strong corporate governance system that as the unit, as husband and wife, it doesn't currently signal. The second question is, please, can you remind me about the second question? Can anyone remind me? Mr. Chidobe's second question. I know his third question had to do with what should we consider when we are recruiting board members. Some people say they're too busy. Some people, will want monetary benefits. What was the second question, please? I should have written it down. Mr. Chidubem, are you there? What's your second question? Just a hint.
Yes, I'm here.
Your second question was?
My second question is the issue of sending reports to CAC.
Yes, the consequences, yes. Good. Now, in the past, many organizations have gotten away with failure to comply. But recently, there's been a wave of, regulatory action by the CAC in the aspect of compliance. In fact, if you go to their website, it's shocking to many founders to discover that their NGOs are reported as inactive. There's a website, the CAC website now, it is possible for you to check your status. Many people who believe that their NGOs exist, the CAC does not recognize you as an active entity, because the CAC, when they embraced technology and automation, they were now able to start checking how, levels of compliance between organizations. The most grave consequences, your name will be struck off, your NGO's name will be struck off the register. And what that simply means is that you are no longer alive. You are no longer an incorporated entity, you are a dead entity. So please, everybody go and regularize. What it means is you will have to pay certain fines. In my case, when I started, I wasn't filing my annual returns for the first 3 years. I didn't even know the implications. But it was when I was entering into a relationship with a grant partner that they insisted on compliance. And so I had to now contact CAC, and CAC said, oh, from the date at which you were registered, we are going to calculate it yearly, and there's a fine for each year you did not file. It's not too heavy. You can, most of us, you'll be able to gather your resources to immediately regularize. But please, I want to urge that as a point of urgency, we all go back to the drawing board to go and regularize our situation with CAC. Now, an example, last year or in COVID, in 2020, the federal government introduced what they call the survival grant. Many of you may have heard of it. It was a grant that was set up to support organizations in paying salaries during that hostile economic climate that we found ourselves in because of the impact of COVID. That grant was also extended to NGOs. However, the conditions that were set in place by the federal government were that you must show evidence of, active registration status with the regulatory, but with CAC. So part of the requirements to meet to be able to access that grant was that you had to prove that your status was active with CAC. And active status simply meant you have been complying, you have been satisfying all the compliance, all the regulatory stipulations by CAC. And so you are in compliance, and then CAC says, yes, you are an active organization, you are doing good, they can partner with you to support you. Many NGOs and many businesses missed out on that opportunity because of this singular problem of non-compliance with regulatory requirements. So many NGOs that had not been filing returns, they were not eligible because their status was inactive. They started running giddy to quickly regularize. That is even small. You just missed a survival grant. But what happens when you are struck off the register? And Nigeria is going to a place where they are harmonizing records. Soon, the banks will be able to, now these days, they will ask you for SCUMO, they will ask you for this, BVN, this, that, BVN of all the board members and all that. We're getting to a point where soon the banks will be sharing records with CAC. And if you are forward thinking, I always like to observe trends and make predictions and project ahead. It is very likely that we're entering into a future where BVN records will be so harmonized that at the level of CAC interaction with banks, your NGO will suddenly lose its bank account. So let's just forestall these possibilities. Kindly, everybody, make sure that you are in compliance with the regulatory stipulations by CAC. So that is the second question. Like I said, the third question, I will deal with it now. We are already almost, it's almost 12:30. I want to be able to at least address this issue of recruiting board members. So, Mr. Itaya, would you like us to take another question, or do I still just proceed to the?
Please proceed.
Okay, all right. So in the next 35 minutes, I want us to focus on guidelines for selecting our board of directors. What steps we should be carrying out, what we should be looking for, what documents we should be sharing with them, how we should be formalizing the relationship we have with our board members. It's important. So let's move. So at the end of this 35 minutes, I hope that these are the things you would have, learned and been able to put down. I like this diagram. Selecting a board of directors. I'm sure you can all still see the screen. Again, this slide is saying that nonprofit corporation must have a legal body to assume responsibility for governance and setting overall standards, policies, and procedures. Essentially, it's trying to describe for us the role of your board. Your board is not just an inconsequential statute, it's not a formality. And like I said, many times, because of how we end up setting up these NGOs, we don't pay due attention to the board. We bring our friends, we bring our parents' friends. In my case, my mother was she was a lecturer, a professor in the University of Ibadan. So she, made suggestions about good thing. What saved me was that, at least I had two credible professors whose areas of expertise fell within the purview of the objectives, but it was default. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't because I knew what I was doing, or I sat down and gave my mother certain guidelines and said, please, can you make suggestions from your networks of people I should approach? I was just, so I was lucky that at least, her recommendation, because of her profession, she was able to tap from her networks. But sometimes it's not just even having these names. Are they going to be committed? That's another question. So one of my board professors was very committed. The other one was non-responsive. So I had to make certain decisions at the end of the day. But like I said, we just look within our immediate network of friends and relatives. And most times, to satisfy CAC registration requirements, we just put names. Please pause. If you are yet to recruit your board, I'm happy that you are experiencing this session now. If you have already recruited, well, review, take a look at each member and see whether they fit, the needs and the requirements and what remedial steps you can take. First of all, let me be very clear about the benefits of a board, an effective board. An effective board speaks for you. That is, if I insist on my board members' names on my letterhead, because my former letterheads are going to places that I physically may not get to, or when I have left the place, the letter is still speaking for me. I know how, when I'm interacting with an organization, I immediately scrutinize their board. And I assume that many people who are encountering me are doing the same thing. You see, anybody who is entrusted with public-spirited service is constantly under scrutiny. The greatest currency you are bargaining with, let me be clear, is trust. Trust. And that's why we're trying to repair the damage that previous actors in the NGO space have done, because they've eroded trust. Your board member is also part of that bargaining system for trust. I know many organizations that gained a very competitive grant because of the singular name of a board member that is listed, the name of a member listed in their board. Somebody who maybe was once a UN delegate and once, and then maybe the person served so meritoriously that immediately this panel, this grant awarding panel saw the name of that individual on the application document of this organization. Immediately it inspired trust and said, for this person to be serving on their board, we can work with this organization. So please, recognize what really is at stake. Your board member is part of the bargaining system of trust. Apart from your active fulfillment of your mandate, apart from your reports that show that you have been doing the work, apart from the pictures, your website, your social media, all your storytelling channels that show to the public that you are carrying out your objectives. The individuals who govern, who serve as part of your governing structure, are also signaling to the public whether they can deal with you, transact with you, engage with you or not. So your board is a credibility instrument for your organization. That's one. And I'm speaking practically from my experience. Another thing your board is a great advisory tool. Your board will bring in perspective. I don't joke with my board meetings. I give them ample notice. I send reminders. I call them individually. I message them privately just to make sure they will attend the meeting because I need their insights. And that's why the diversity of your board is critical. I have a trainee who runs a health NGO. She basically is focused on eradicating maternal mortality, incidents in Nigeria. We know we have a very high maternal mortality incidence or rate in Nigeria. On her board, naturally, apart from the other individuals who bring in different levels of skills, it's only natural that in that kind of organization, I expect to see a health practitioner, a health professional, a health expert. In fact, more specifically, somebody who has an understanding of that unique field of health where she's operating in, gynecology or obstetrics and all of those issues. So a public health expert with, years of service in issues of maternal mortality would do wonderfully well on your board if that's your objective. If you're dealing with cancer, you want to provide a supportive, you're an NGO that sees that maybe child oncology is a problem. Children who are admitted into hospital for cancer-related, challenges, families don't have enough support. On your board, I will expect to see an oncologist, somebody with cancer specialization. I'm just giving you examples. If you are working with youth-related or employability issues, apart from this, so the diversity, you must carefully select people who bring in skills and experience that can add to the kind of insights and advice they provide for you as management during meetings. Because you're making decisions every day. You need good counsel. So you carefully select a board that can give you advice, that can say, focus on this aspect of legal. Many people don't know, but it is a legal requirement, not at national level, but maybe at international level, that all NGOs who are operating in the issue of climate, blah, 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 should be registered with the European Commission for Climate Adaptation. Maybe the person is an international human rights lawyer. And maybe, that specific brand or that specific field of expertise is what you want guidance, because you want to be able to, attend consultative, processes, international consultative processes. You want to be able to, submit working documents to the UN, ECOSOC, things like that. So have a diverse board that brings in relevant experience, expertise, field of knowledge, subject matter expertise that can guide you. I always tell people, try to have somebody who can guide you legally. Try to have somebody who can advise you financially, that can say, you recently got a grant and it's a non-restrictive grant. So therefore, don't just deploy everything to projects. Invest in these financial bonds. The federal government recently announced these so bonds. Or from my years of experience working in investment banking or finance, I know that, areas of that are high interest yield areas for investment are real estate. I think that this NGO should buy a piece of land in this community because it is likely that in the next 10 years, so they can guide you and you're making the right investments. Or somebody with administrative experience and background who can say your HR policies, make sure that all your recruitment processes follow safeguarding guidelines. They will guide you. On my board, I remember there was a time when we were setting up our admin policy. It was a board member who served for many years as an administrator for the University College Hospital in Ibadan, who said, there's a clause I see in your admin policy that is dangerous. Take it out. Because when we were in University College Hospital, we had at least 15 cases with employees as a result of this clause. So they will help you avoid, traps, invisible minefields that could potentially be very damaging or scandalous for your organization. So try to have these diverse pool of individuals who serve on your board. Another thing you must recognize is, don't just go and pack names. I like the fact that many of the questions you raised, some people said, they told us, oh, they are not going to be able to commit. They are too busy to be able to make the time commitment. That should tell you, I know some people that have written to me to please serve on their board, and I say I can't. Because a responsibility on a board is a serious responsibility. It's not just something you just put your name and you just disappear. In fact, if you do that, you don't know the activities of that NGO. They can damage the hard-earned reputation you are building somewhere else because you are not paying attention to what they are doing. You are not following up on their actions, and maybe they go and get involved in a huge scandal, and next thing, they publish the names of the board members in the national dailies, and your name is listed amongst them. So if you know that you cannot put your name somewhere and monitor how your name is being used, or, don't go there. Now, make sure when you are actively recruiting people, you get their commitment. That's why I say you have to have terms of reference. When people ask me, please serve on my board, I say, what does it entail? Many people, for instance, don't know that the board is the first point of call for membership contributions. And a lot of founders don't disclose this to board members. I don't know why. They don't disclose this. I was very upset. I was asked to join a board once. I said, tell me all my responsibilities. What and what do you expect of me? And they only told me 2. Next thing, I got a letter from them saying my board contribution, all board members' contributions for the year was 50,000 naira. I said, why didn't you tell me that being a member of this board involved financial obligations? That's misrepresentation. You deliberately omitted that aspect so you could gain my commitment, and then you surprised me with this, responsibility. So please disclose everything. I am very clear to my board members. In fact, it was my board that sat in a meeting and agreed that all board members would make annual contributions to the organization, and then they put a benchmark. If I'm recruiting a new board member, I have to disclose to that person that here are the agreed upon obligations that our board members deliver to the organization. This is what we will expect of you, assuming you join us. Are you able to satisfy these requirements? Able and willing. So all of these things, you have to gain people who can actually attend your meeting. Because if you don't satisfy quorum, you will run into problems. Good thing is now, what has really helped a lot of people, COVID did come with benefits, because now there's such a hybrid culture that it is now common for board members to join meetings online. In the past, if a board member could not physically attend, it was absent. There was no other alternative. But today, good thing is your board member can join from Lagos, can join from Geneva, can join from New York, China, Germany, wherever they are currently in the world. If there's a notice of meeting and they can align their time schedules, they can join your meeting. So that technology is helping us to overcome that previous setback that a lot of organizations face. But if you know that the person is not committed, please don't just go and, because the person is a famous person. Some people want just famous names. They just go and pack famous people, and the person has said, yeah, I'm not interested though. Don't put such people, please. Put people who will actually attend your meetings regularly. Put people who bring knowledge into the mix. That is, they can provide, relevant experience-based knowledge to guide the decisions of the organization. And then put people who, by their public record, they themselves are committed to public spiritedness. I have too many people coming to me because they are faced with situations where their board member is asking for percentage of grants. These things are real. Where some board members said, we started this thing together. Now you are making money. Abi, gender empowerment. Now they're calling you to this, they're calling you to that. Any conference that the organization is invited for, the board member wants to be amongst the delegates sent. The board member wants to, have profit sharing from grant that is restricted, grant that is meant for the pursuit of the objectives of the organization. So please make sure you check the public record, the past records. That is, find a way to do your due diligence to make sure that you are bringing in people into your board who are not motivated by financial reward, who are not calculating this juicy entity and saying, no problem, I'll be part of this thing, I'll be attending all the meetings, I'll be guiding. And the only reason they are doing it is so that the day you have your big break, they will cash out. You will run into problems because these kinds of people will want to micromanage the organization. And if you're not playing ball, they will want to eliminate you. I know some organizations where the board connived to remove the founder. Also, in the interest of your organization, you shouldn't even desire to be an executive director in Pepe forever. You should at some point want to transit to the board and then hand over the reins of management and decision-making to a new professional who comes in with fresh knowledge, fresh insights, fresh industry perspectives. But that's a different conversation. But I've tried to share with you some of the things you must pay attention to when you are, mapping out who should be on your board. Try to have a mix. I know some people who go and look for international figures. They want to imbo. This, for full disclosure, at least, I want this to be a very practical session. I have some people who have come to me to say, I want to put a Westerner, somebody foreign, because I've noticed that, the minute there is a foreign face in the profiles, people, even locally, people accord such organization more respect. That motive is already sketchy. That kind of thing, when it comes to now looking for you will even run into complications, because sometimes when you want to even process your tax exemption letter, as an NGO, you're tax exempt, but you need to process your tax exemption letter. The FIRS will ask you for all the tax clearance certificates of all your board members as a premise for processing tax exemption letter. Are you going to be able to get the relevant documents from these foreign-based individuals? Pay attention to all of these things. So what I tell people is, you can have some, what we call maybe board of advisors, they are not formal, but you consider them helpful advisors, and you've built a relationship with them and they seem to be interested in your organization. You can categorize them, give them that sort of category, but don't tie the running of the sustainability of your organization to their involvement, because for very many reasons, there may be complications. They may be foreign and their documents have no, relevance here to your own statutory regulatory bodies. They may not, understand your local context to even be able to really guide you appropriately. The best advice they can give you is only in matters of international context. So don't go and start just because you want, feferity or fancy looking these things. You're going to start picking the wrong people. So these are certain elements. Now, having talked about what you should consider when recruiting your board, let me say that it is important to formally engage your board. That is, there must be a document signed by both the board member who has accepted and consented to be a member of the board and the organization. That is, either you acting for the organization or the organization acting for itself with its seal. You have to have such documents, and it can be very simple. When we say such documents, I don't mean that you're going to go and develop a deed of title or call one mega lawyer to come and start drafting. No. You can simply spell out, we call it terms of reference, or some people call it board charters. It's just a document of guiding the understanding that, will govern the relationship between this individual and the organization. It spells out responsibilities of the board member and obligations that the organization owes the board member. For instance, I tell people, some people invite me to serve on their board. I tell them, especially if it is an organization whose objectives are similar to the objectives my own organization is pursuing. In my board charter terms of reference, we have what we call a conflict of interest clause. it's important for every board member to disclose any potential conflict of interest. So I'm a board member in your organization, and I happen to be working maybe in a different organization. And next thing, there's a call for proposals or grants, and you are applying, this organization is applying for that bid, you're bidding for it. Maybe it's a federal government thing, maybe it's this. If I'm working in a company that is bidding for the same thing, I should immediately disclose to this organization that, oh, my company or my entity is also applying. So any conversation you are having regarding your application, how to strengthen your application, how to give yourself an advantage over all the other pool of applicants, I should not be privy to such, because I can easily take that information and use it to strengthen my own application. These are things, not to say, I know we continue to, emphasize that the world of development should not be competitive, it should be collaborative. But these are day-to-day practical realities. I'm on a board of an organization that is applying for something. My organization is also applying for it. It's not fair for me to be sitting in meetings where they are strategizing on how, their application will be a winning application. It's not fair to them. Rather, I should abstain from such meetings and immediately disclose my conflict so that I will not be accused in the future of taking their information to strengthen my application. Similarly, I will not take the information, that is strengthening my own entity's application and go and give it to this entity, because for that period in time, we are bidding for the same thing, and life is, in that instance, that resource is scarce. It will only go to one or two people, and each of us wants it. So, so moments like that, these are things you must introduce into your board terms of reference. The board should disclose conflicts of interest whenever they arise. Things like that. The board member must be able to commit time. The board member should support the organization in fundraising. It is critical. The board should be able to tap into their networks, to be able to share your reports. When you prepare your annual reports, your board members are supposed to take those reports and also share it. When you are doing programs, exciting programs, your board should be sharing it with their networks. Some board members don't know this. If you don't tell them, they don't know. They won't take it upon themselves. They won't act with the initiative. So you must tell them, please, every board member, kindly share with your networks. Board members should recommend names of people you should approach for partnership, for funding, for strategic, support. Board members should support you, should help you when you are seeking corporate sponsors. That's why sometimes it's important you go and draw from private sector. A board member who is, maybe has served as regional manager for this, maybe telecom sector, or was for many years, a CEO of a major financial institution. And, these things help organizations. Even in your community, you can look for a board member who is an industrialist, who, by virtue of their networks, they will be able to recommend to you, oh, I have these 5 friends. What are you people planning for the year? Give me your proposal document for the year. I will gather my friends. I will tell my friends to come and support my organization. Or you're working with disability rights. A board member that would be able to go around their networks and tell all their friends and say, please, every year, quarterly, give us a check to support the work of this foundation, to support, the education of these children living with it. This is the role of a board. So please ensure that you spell out all these in your terms of reference for your board members. In our next sessions, we'll go over, because we've already come distinctly to the close, nearly the end. Let me address the question that Mr. Kayode, and I think Mr. Kayode and Mr. Chidubem asked, what happens when you reach out to so many people and they turn you down? Or for some reason or the other, they can't, commit to your board. You have to widen your search. Fortunately, in terms of legal requirements, CAC only requires a minimum of 2. So at the level of statutory requirement, that's not even your problem, because I'm sure you'll be able to get 2 people who can commit. But more importantly, for the strength and growth of your organization, it's important to have a right mix of people. I always tell people, don't just limit yourself to CAC statutory requirement of 2, because 2 heads sitting in a room might not be sufficient to really inspire, the kind of growth and scale you want for your organization. Meanwhile, if you were able to get, maybe a retired judge who is now retired back to your hometown, but maintains ties and is able to connect you, to so many people. You also have, a legal person who is able to keep guiding you, reminding you, sending you, things like that. You're able to also have a financial expert who says to the organization, okay, do this, do this, do this. And within the following 3 years, we expect certain investment bonds to yield. So you yourself, bearing in mind the future you envision for your organization, it might be more strategic. It is usually more strategic for you to even invite a few more people than CAC requires to serve as your board members. And if the initial people you reached out to do not accept, they are not the only people in the world. Trust me, you can still find more. Ask people. When I stress that, don't just look for your family members and relatives. The principle I'm trying to establish from that is your guidelines should be expertise, experience, credibility, active commitment. These are the things that should be guiding you, not just who is the most available. But sometimes those family members, they are helpful to refer you to people. You can ask them, who would you recommend? I have an organization that I'm hoping in the next 5 years will achieve the following 3 goals. Who would you recommend? I remember I was invited to serve as a member of the board of the National Democratic Congress, I've forgotten the name, in Afghanistan. How did I get on that board? When I was in grad school in Chicago, I had shared some of my documents of some of the work I had done in civic engagement for youth in schools. So my grad school, my student department in my grad school, when this student in Afghanistan wanted to initiate something similar to strengthen democratic processes through cultural measures, that is civic education measures, enlightenment approaches at community level, they recommended me all the way in Nigeria to this individual based in Afghanistan. I don't understand the local context of Afghanistan. So when we had meetings for 6 months every Saturday before this person launched or went ahead to even register. These are things I noticed we don't do here. I didn't do it. 6 months of every Saturday strategic planning. So I would bring in my own insights from a developing world perspective. Of course, we know what recently happened in Afghanistan, but the point is this person brought in people who brought in some unique kind of experience and expertise that they wanted. So similarly, we need to do that. In your case, if one person turns you down, ask around. This student I'm using as an example, went to the International Students Guidance Office to get recommendations, to tell you how your network is so vast that you can get recommendations from people you're not even exploring or exploiting currently. So rather than invite that family member, maybe what you should be asking that family member to do is instead to recommend to you, who do they think could be somebody that could be beneficial for the goals you have described? Who can guide you? Whose experience, whose public life, experience in public life, or experience as a professional, or experience even in community leadership could be useful for this organization you have described. These are things that I want to just encourage us to do. And if somebody says they are not available, please accept that in good faith, because not many people admit that they are not available. Too often, many people, for sentimental reasons, they don't know how to say no. They will say, okay, and then they will become a liability on your board because they won't attend any meetings. You will hardly meet quorum. You will be postponing meetings so that you can meet, or you will have to now be sending them, reports of the meetings held, requesting for their, maybe when you want resolutions passed, you will be prompting them, please read the document. Please, do you vote? Do you approve? The labor and effort you will have to put to get them to just make one single decision, voting decision for your organization, is ×3. Whereas had they been clear from the onset that they didn't have the time, it would have been better for you. So where you are told no, please widen your search, ask other people for further recommendations, seek out, interview your board members, ask them for a 15-minute chat. I didn't know these things happen. On LinkedIn, several people reach out to me, can I have a 15-minute chat with you? We are considering you for a board membership status in our organization. We just want to learn a little bit more about, how you handled this particular project. Sometimes ask for meetings, a 10-minute phone call, a 15-minute phone call, just to rub minds. Tell them what the goal you've set, and where you see them functioning, what role you see them playing, and whether they can actually satisfy that role you have envisaged in your mind. These are some preliminary things you can do to gain the kind of people you want on your board. Let me call it a day at this point. I will pick up next week.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I have a question here because I have a privileged position as American Center. We have somebody here who said the current CAC registration does not capture vision statement and mission statement in the Constitution. How do we address this? Can you quickly address that question?
So, like I said, CAC document or requirements, from what I've found, are very minimal. They just want you to submit a constitution. They just want you to submit the names of your trustees. But if you allow CAC requirements alone to be the framework for which you build the organization, you will run into trouble. So more importantly, you will need to focus on your strategic plan document. That is your own blueprint. The truth is, if you rely on CAC statutory requirements alone, you won't have a solid enough blueprint to build a sustainable, sound, compelling organization. So it is your strategic plan. There is no harm in your strategic plan putting more, going through more rigor than CAC asked of you. You are the founder. You are the one with the vision. So you have a responsibility to do what is best in the interest of the goals you've set. To do what is best. So do what CAC asks and satisfy CAC. But for the growth of your organization, you must do more. You have to have a vision. You have to have a mission statement. A donor will require it of you. Is CAC going to fund you? No. So give unto CAC what CAC wants. But more importantly, do for your organization what it needs to actually be, eligible for grants, eligible for global partnerships, and to be in compliance with best practices. Best practices. So go ahead and in your strategic planning, expound on all these aspects that CAC doesn't ask of you. That's CAC. You've given CAC their bare requirements, but please do all these other essentials because they are critical.
Thank you very much. Can we put our hands together for a speaker today? I'm very sure that we all gained one or two things. I want to
I've lost Mr. Itayo. Is it just me?
You hear me?
Now we can. Yes, you're back, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to thank Adam for a wonderful session. People have clapped for you. Let's clap again.
Let me stop sharing.
Also, I would like to thank all our American Spaces Director for anchoring these sessions in their locations. I would like to address a very quick issue. Many people have been asking, can anyone join this discussion, this training, this course? The answer is capital yes. Anyone can share the link with anybody, but the most important thing is for people to learn. But if you need a certificate of participation, you must come over to our American Spaces. And you must be there at least 80% of the time. If you don't do that, you will not qualify for the certificate. But I know people, I'm looking at few people that I've invited that do not need certificate. All they need is knowledge. I mean, how much can we pay Hedem for what she has shared with us today? If we have to pay her, that will be running to millions. Abby? So, but this is part of the US contribution to Nigerians. And please, let's enjoy it and let's invite people to enjoy it. So let me say it finally, anyone with the link can join. But if you need a certificate, you have to be there physically at the American Spaces. So those who are in states where we don't have people, share with them, they can be part of this, they can benefit. And so we thank you very much for this. What is left for me is just to announce to you that on Friday, if you check our Facebook page, we're going to be having another alumni like Edem, who will be sharing with us our experiences on elections. So if you're interested, please join us on our American Spaces Facebook page or American Spaces near you. I will type in right there the Facebook page so that you can see it. It's fb.me/American Spaces NG. So please join us then. Have a lovely day. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.